Good morning, everybody. Good morning, and good day. Thank you all for joining in time. We start the session. People will keep joining in, and hopefully they will not disturb the session when they are joining in by asking questions in between. We'll start the session right away. Well, this session is about job interviews. We are going to focus exclusively today on the job interviews and how do we crack the code on job interviews such that we are making the best of that opportunity which is being presented to us in showcasing ourselves to the prospective organization, and the interviewer can make a easy and quick decision on our selections. Okay, so that's what we'll be doing. It's a 90-minute session and I've got a lot to share. So while I generally encourage questions during the session, like if you have a doubt, immediately ask. What I would do today slightly different is, if you have a question, put it in the chat. While I'm going through the session, I will be keeping an eye on the chat. There's a small window open on the side that I can look at, and I can respond to, I can just cover those questions while I'm talking. Or if I feel I can handle this later, or I'm going to cover this in it, then I'll leave it as it is. If I'm not looking at a particular question that you have put in, don't worry, I will cover them eventually. Okay, so we'll try to keep the pace and tempo so that we cover maximum in the 90 minutes. And at the end of 90 minutes, we'll formally close the session. And then I am available for question and answer, and we can go on for another half an hour, depending on any questions out there with you all. Okay, that sounds good. So session is being recorded, and that's the very basic ground rule. Please do not unmute in middle, and if there is a question that you really need to ask and I am not answering that, even though you have put in the chat and you really feel that it's important that the question be answered right away, just raise your virtual hand and I'll pause and ask you to unmute and ask the question. Okay, so here we go. Wow. Okay, so the session starts off with a couple of videos, and I'll be showing all these. I've got 4 videos to show. I'll show them all together in the beginning, and we will reference them while we are talking, and you will understand more and more as we go through the sessions why these videos are important. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to stop the screen sharing for a moment, and okay, I need to start the video, and remember to share the audio also. Okay. Okay. Let's have the video here. Let me get it on share screen. Okay, I'm going to share the screen, share the sound. Okay, now watch carefully what is happening in the video.
These folks who are entering, the man with the white shirt, the lady with the trench coat, and subsequently one other member of our staff, will face the rear. And you'll see how this man in the trench coat tries to maintain his individuality, but little by little, he looks at his watch, but he's really making an excuse for turning just a little bit more to the wall. Now we'll try it once again. Here's the candid subject. Here comes the candid camera staff, 3 of them at least. And this man has apparently been in groups before. Here's a fella with his hat on in the elevator. First he makes a full turn to the rear and Charlie closes the door. A moment later, we'll open the door, everybody's changed positions. Now we'll see if we can use group pressure for some good. Now, in a moment, on Charlie's signal, everybody turns forward. Notice they take off their hats. And now, do you think we could reverse the procedure? Watch.
Great. A very simple experiment of sorts. Just watching people responding to responding to the group behavior. When you see people around you doing certain things, the tendency to do the same thing, right? There have been many experiments like that. Sometimes it is the visual cue which is happening. You see other people doing it and you do it. There is even a longer video, which I mean, of course, because of its length, I did not want to include there. But the person in the room is there and there is a bell which goes off and other people sitting in the room. So there is only one person who is the real candidate for experiment. All others are part of the experiment. And on the visual cue, everybody stands up. Whenever the bell goes on, like tong, everybody stands. And this guy is just looking at everybody. Why is everybody standing? And the bell goes on and everybody sits down. After a few minutes, again the bell goes on. Everybody stands up and sits down. He's just looking at each other. The third time the bell goes on, or the fourth time the bell goes on, this person feels compelled to become a part of the group. Is no longer trying to stand on his or her own, and they just follow the group. And then one by one, the members of the group, the people sitting in the room, are leaving, till we reach a point where only this person who originally was the experimental candidate is sitting in the room, and the bell goes on and he or she stands up. Bell goes on again, sits down. None of the other people who were part of the experiment are there, and this guy has been now conditioned to perform in a certain manner, and he continues to do that. And then more people are introduced in the room, people who are subjects of the experiment. They come in and they watch this person standing up and sitting down whenever the bell goes on. After a few times of hesitation, they also join in. And people keep adding to the room, all these who are subjects, and they keep following the same thing. At the end of the experiment, it's a pretty long experiment, you have around about 7 to 10 people in the room who were not part of the experimental team. They were all subjects, and they are all responding to the bell based on this. It's mind-blowing to see that, since it was done in a controlled environment and all. But when you start relating to your life, you start observing that, oh, you have done such similar things. You have behaved in a certain manner simply because everybody was doing it. And then even when the direct influence was gone, you continued to behave like that. And in return, you were influencing others to follow the same behavior without really knowing why you were behaving in the first place like that. Think about it. Job interviews, are they also having a sort of effect on you, where people have been to job interviews and they have told their experiences to you, and now you are living those same experiences, whether they work or not? You haven't really analyzed them, but you are just following the same thing. As as we have put in correctly, conformity to be part of the group. These are the conformity experiments. And now we go to the second video, which was the Ash conformity experiment. And just watch that. You will see a person defying logic, defying the input which he receives with his own eyes and agree to the group, knowing fully well that he's wrong. Right? Let's watch that one. Give me a moment. Okay, once again. You can see the video now.
But an experiment is not a public opinion poll. It examines behavior under the pressure of social forces, as the experiment of Solomon Asch reveals.
The experiment you'll be taking part in today involves the perception of lengths of lines. As you can see here, I have a number of cards, and on each card there are several lines. Your task is a very simple one. You're to look at the line on the left and determine which of the three lines on the right is equal to it in length. All right, we'll proceed in this order. You'll give your answer.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, the fifth person with the white t-shirt. The others are confederates of the experimenter and have been told to give wrong answers on some of the trials. The experiment begins uneventfully as subjects give their judgments.
2, 2, 2, 2,
2, 3,
3, 3, 3,
But on the third trial, something happens.
2,
2, 2,
2, 2.
The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence.
1.
Asch found subjects went along with the group on 37% of the critical trials. But he found through interviews that they went along with the group for different reasons.
1,
1.
They must be right. There are 4 of them and 1 of me.
1.
This subject's yielding is based on a distortion of his judgment. He genuinely believes that the group is correct.
1, 1,
1,
2,
1, 2,
2, 2,
I know they're wrong, but why should I make waves?
2,
In this case, the subject knows he is right, but goes along to avoid the discomfort of disagreeing with the group. Here, the distortion is at the level of his response.
2,
2,
2,
2,
In the previous experiment, the naive subject stood alone against the group. In this variation, Asch gave the naive subject a partner, here seated in the third position, who also gives the correct response.
1,
1, 2,
1,
2.
With a partner, yielding drops to only 5% of the critical trials compared to 37% without a partner. Although subjects report warmth and good feeling toward the partner, they typically deny that he played a role in their own independence.
So that was the classic Asch experiment, where people being subject to certain stimulus were responding in a very particular and a peculiar way also, defying what they saw with their own eyes and giving a response which was incorrect. Okay, just to be part of the group. And as soon as they found at least one person who was giving them company with the right answer, the power of the group kind of dissolved significantly. Okay, now, so that was the Asch experiment. Now I take you to another one, and you will have to be very, very attentive about this one. Okay, the experiment itself is selective attentive test, and hence my request to you to be very, very attentive. Okay, so here's the video coming up.
This
Okay, so this is a selective attentive test by Simon and Chabres, 1999.
is a test of selective attention. Count.
Okay, so these this is the very clear, simple instruction. Okay. Count how many times the players wearing white t-shirt are passing the basketball. Okay. So you have to count. Right. I'm going to begin and be on alert.
How many times the players wearing white pass the basketball? How many passes?
Okay. So very attentive people. Can I see in chat your answers? How many passes? Ravi says 12. SB 13. Sharad 13. Where are the others? You've got quite a few in the room now. 11, 11, 11. Okay. 13. 12. 12. If your answer is 1 or 2 here, I can understand. The initial first pass may have been lost, but then it should not be very far off. Okay. 12, 13, 11. Most of the answers are in this range. Anybody else giving an answer? So the answers I've received are Aarti, Puneet, Vikas, Andrea, Vinisha, Arun, Sharad, SB, and Ravi. Okay. Yes, one more, 13 from Adisha. Okay, great. So with those answers in,
Did you count?
what's the right answer?
The correct
15. So the 13, the ones who counted 13 were the closest. As I said, 1 or 2 here and there is okay if you missed in the beginning. But the video is just halfway through. So there was something else. There was an alphabet written on the wall behind all the people. Did somebody notice the alphabet? Don't write the alphabet, just say a yes or a no. So a Y or a N, yes or no. Did you notice the alphabet? Okay, I've seen 2 yeses, lots of no's. Ding, 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 ding. No more yes. Only 2 people have written yes. Vinisha and SB. So what was the alphabet? Yes, it was an S. Okay, great. And now we come to the real question.
answer is 15 passes. But did you see the gorilla?
So, did you see the gorilla? In that short video, did you see the gorilla? Vikas says yes. Arun says yes. Puneet, yes. If you didn't see the gorilla, you can simply say no. It's not a trick question. It's a very straightforward question. If you saw the gorilla, yes. If you did not see the gorilla, no. Okay. So I had a couple of yeses, 2 no's. Where are the others? I mean, you have to answer yes or no. Or say I did not see the video. That would be the third alternative. There cannot be a fourth one. No, 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 no. 4 no's, 3 yeses, 5th no. Are there any more yes and no's coming? Guys, this is important. I'm talking about a gorilla. So that's a big one. Okay. All those people saying a no, are you actually wondering what gorilla? Okay. So let's answer the question. What gorilla am I talking about? Okay. Now watch it as we continue. In the center of the screen, there was a gorilla. Okay, gorilla coming in, walking through the scene, standing in the middle, beating his chest, and walking across the entire scene.
This video is from research by Daniel Simons and Christopher Chabris and is copyrighted.
Great. Once again, selective attention test. All those who missed the gorilla, don't worry. I have shown this video, I would say at least 100 times in the last 12 to 13 years, ever since I first saw this video. And all through my consulting life, the trainings which I have conducted, people I've consulted, and I've shown this across levels. As part of my change management consulting career, I've worked with senior managers, top management, people down the ranks, everywhere. And pretty much I have had a 50-50 count of a yes versus no. Some people saying, yes, we saw the gorilla, and the other are saying, what gorilla? There was no gorilla. What? Where did you see the gorilla? Was there a tiny toy in the scene somewhere that we missed? No, it was a full life-sized 5.5 feet gorilla walking across the scene. Something which you shouldn't have missed, but you still did. And that's what selective attention test is all about. Okay. And now we come to the last and one of the most important videos, which is very, very relevant for job interviews. And that's after the video is when take it further. Okay. So once again, let me pull the video. Share my screen again. Okay. Now listen carefully to the video because the audio is important here.
Biggest fear for an adolescent is written all the way throughout this text. The biggest fear of an adolescent, Jesse?
Not fitting in.
Is not fitting in. You talked about acceptance. Now, to understand how this happens and how this looks and what this feels like, I'm going to have you do an activity. This is an on-your-own activity, and just this is not to tax you. These are easy things. This is just to kind of get you feeling what we're going to go over. So everybody, if you would take out a short piece of paper. I'm going to pass out these papers, and just keep them face down. And if you would, no one write on these, write on your own papers. Keep them face down. Yeah. Everybody have one? If you would, just do them one at a time, and I will tell you when to do them. Everybody turn it over. Just do your own work. And this isn't meant to be hard. These are anagrams. Just do the first one only. Go ahead and solve it. An anagram is rearrange the letters to form a word. Just one. Just rearrange those letters to form a word. When you're done, I need to see your hand raised. Okay, keep going. We'll wait. Keep your hands up, please. Just do number one. Don't go on. Don't go on. This isn't meant to be difficult. Okay, put your hands down. Let's just go to number two. Don't even worry about number one. Go to number two. Solve that one. Again, when you're done, I want to see your hands up. Everybody's hands down. We're going to go ahead and do number three. For number three, rearrange the letters, and as soon as you do, go ahead and put your hand up. Here's what you need to know. You were both given two different lists. This side of the room was given these three words. And left side of the room, here you go. They were given bat. What would the word be? The second one, they were given lemon. Brian, the word? Melon. Melon. They were easy. The trick here was both of you were given the third word, which was the same. The third word was cinerama, which was American. Your first two words on this side of my classroom were not solvable. They were impossible tasks. I'm sorry. I know, but here's what we did this for. I was able to induce something called learned helplessness in the left side of the room very easily within about 5 minutes. I want you to think about what happened to you, this left side of the room, when you saw the right side of the room raising their hands because they already had the task done. What happened to you during that time? Jory?
Felt stupid.
You felt stupid? Okay.
I felt rushed.
Felt rushed? Joelle?
I was even more confused.
You were even more confused because they all got it and you were still struggling. Chelsea?
Frustrated.
Frustrated. What happened by the time you got to the third word? Because I'm here to tell you, this side of the room is not significantly more intelligent than this side of the room. That was a random assignment. So what happened to show the differences? Why did you have more of a difficult time with the third word, which was the exact same word? Brian?
My confidence was shot.
What you experienced was a term called learned helplessness. How many have heard of the term before? Let me see your hands. Learned helplessness is often used in the academic literature to mean what? Jory?
Basically, they fail once or can't do something one time, and then they apply that to everything in the future, so all the future applications become skewed by that learned helplessness.
And here's the thing, and this is what I want everybody to understand. It's usually only used in the academic research. You'll see it in ed psych books. You'll see it in school textbooks when they talk about learning. But I'm going to
Welcome back. Great. So, learned helplessness. Why am I showing learned helplessness today in a session which is about cracking job interviews? Well, there would be very few lucky people out there who would go for a job interview and get the job in the very first attempt. Generally, people will have an experience of going through several interviews and then hitting upon the target, getting the job or the offer. Sometimes multiple offers, but it's that experience which brings in the learned helplessness. If you've done an interview and been rejected, and another interview and rejected, and another interview and rejected, and so on and on and on, even if you did not want to, consciously, subconsciously, the phenomenon of learned helplessness is working against you. You are being impacted by it. Unless you consciously understand what is happening, the rejection not as a rejection, but a failure of matchmaking. And that's what we are going to discuss today. A large part of interview preparation is not, or cracking the interview, a large part of it is not what happens inside the room. It's actually what happens before you enter the room. And I'm going to spend quite a lot of time in preparing for that interview because that's crucial. And once you have prepared well, and then you go into walk into the interview room, whether it's a Zoom room or a physical room, then you are ready with whatever you have got. The right things to say at the right time and help connect the dots to actually shine through the interview. And still, and mark my words, and still there will be rejections. There will be interviews where you will be rejected, or you can call them failed interviews. Nothing wrong with that. They are meant to be like that, and it's good that they are happening. And we'll come to that also, that what is the good in a failed interview? They are saving you from a lot of pain which you would get in future if you got the job. So it's good that there are certain jobs you don't get. Okay, it's not a perfect science. So we rely on the law of averages. But in general, if you're not getting a certain job, it's good for you. It's just a matter of understanding what is the good in there. Okay, great. So we will be back to our slides. So where is my slides? Let me share my slides and switch on the computer audio. We no longer need that. Videos are done. Great. Here's my slide coming up. Okay. Not to me on this. Okay, great. Ground rules, etc. We have gone through experiments. Okay. Just a quick note, practically and philosophy. Why are we here? In this session, as I've said, it is about cracking interviews. My focus for today is going to be only and only the job interview, right? I am not going to talk about polishing your CVs. I'm not going to talk about how do you network to get and meet people. How do you get to the job interview? I'm not covering that. I'm not a master in that area. I'm going to talk about purely preparing for the job interviews and cracking the job interviews. That's the boundary conditions for today. Okay. Before that, after that, you're not touching today. Okay. Great. So that's what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do very clearly. We have covered the important concepts of conformity, selective attention, and learned helplessness. Learned helplessness, very clearly, be very, very conscious of it, not just from a job interview point of view, but overall life point of view. If there are things happening in your life which can be classified or you are classifying them as a failure, remember they are adding up to the whole concept of learned helplessness for you. Be consciously aware of you of that phenomenon so that you can avoid it. Okay. Selective attention will come more into play when we are getting into the whole interview zone. Conformity, do not follow a trend or the herd or what everybody is saying if it doesn't make sense to you. Find out more information, try and understand it. And if it doesn't make sense to you, do not follow a trend. You might be following a crowd, which is following a crowd, which is following a crowd, which is following a practice which was probably valid or invalid in the past, but may not have a present. So don't take those risks with life or just do things which somebody tells you and you don't understand. Okay. So conformity, very important from that point of view. Conformity, selective attention test, learn helplessness. Okay, we have got somebody who is unmuted and we are getting some noise. Okay, who is it? Unable to see. Okay, MSM, I'll mute you. Okay, so we can do it without disturbance. Okay, I probably. Okay, so cracking the job interviews, it's about the three parts: having the right mindset. And once you are going towards the interview, it's about telling a great story. Each and every job interview is nothing but a storytelling session. You are the storyteller. So that's going to be the second part. And third part is actually being in the interview and taking charge of the interview. Drive the interview. You should be driving the interview and not leave it to the interviewer to drive you. Once you flip that balance, you are in charge, you are in control, and you actually make sure that the interview goes in the direction you want rather than somebody else taking it. Okay. So the first part, having the right mindset. As you might have already guessed, this section, having the right mindset already began half an hour ago, the moment I started showing you the videos. Okay. Now let's take this up further. Rejections are a part of the integral part of this game of job interviews. And for that, you need to understand the game. What is the game? Is it a game where you are up against an opponent, which is your interviewer, and you're trying to win a battle, and at the end of the conversation, it is decided whether you win or not? Actually, no. It's not. It's not a battle that you're going in to win. Might sound very contradictory or even counterintuitive, but it's not a battle that you're going in to win against the interviewer. What you are actually going in during an interview is basically matchmaking. Yes, matrimonial matchmaking. In India, I mean, most of you coming from the Indian background, you might have heard about the horoscope, Kundli matchmaking, which happens, right? Some 36 different pointers on each Kundlini trying to match it. The higher the number of match points, the greater the chances of the marriage to have a long life. Okay, very few pointers matching, and it's doomed for failure. So out of 36, anything above 18 is they would see it favorably. Less than 18, better not go. The job interview is a matchmaking conversation. You are one side of the match, and the other side is the job and the organization. Understand, it's a matchmaking between you and the job in the context of the organization. When you are getting rejected in a job interview, and that's the wrong word to use, but since that is the most commonly used word, and you might have used it in your head at a previous occasion, or when you're going for a job interview and not received a positive response, oh, I got rejected. That rejection is a failure of the match, not your failure. Once you get this baseline and set in your mind, things change drastically. Every interview that you don't convert is not your failure, is a failure of that match. Which is why I said, if you're not getting certain jobs, if you're failing at certain interviews, if you are getting rejected from certain organizations, it's good. The match wasn't there. If that marriage happened, it would lead to a divorce very soon. You would be frustrated in the job where you didn't match. And that match or mismatch could be on account of skills, your personality, or the leadership or managerial tempo and skills that are required. You can have the technical skills, but you don't have the managerial or the skills to match the organization or the organization culture. Your personality does not match the organization culture. And if that mismatch is there, it's a marriage made in hell. So it's good that those rejections are happening because they are saving you time, energy, and a lot of frustration. So welcome them when they happen. Don't get sad about them. Okay, great. So rejections are part of the game. And as I said, job interviews are essentially matchmaking exercises. Now we come to the second part. I started talking about the job, me as a job interview coach, openly very recently. I've been coaching people for their job interviews for several years now. In fact, all through my consulting experience of the last 20 years, I have been helping friends prepare for their job interviews, and over a period of time, the seniority of those individuals increased, and the roles they were aiming for went from middle management to senior management, and now even towards top management. Like even currently, I am working with two individuals who are working towards a top job, a CXO level position. So mock interviews and conversations on how they should be going through the interview and so on and so forth. That's in progress. I haven't been talking too much about it simply because in this line of work, you don't really get testimonials. Somebody who has cracked an interview based on the coaching that I gave them wouldn't really come out openly and say, thank you, Hemant, for coaching me on this. The prospective organization might just reconsider that going through their interview. So they don't really talk about it. But what I've observed is in the last 1 year, there have been too many layoffs. The numbers are just mounting, and the 2023 numbers, and we are just 1.5 months into it, are already probably about 1/3 or half of the entire 2022 numbers. So the pace is increasing, the number of job cuts are increasing. The most recent ones we have heard about are Google having let go 12,000 people in one shot, and in small trickles, more numbers are happening across the globe. So a lot of what I talk about will also be focused on people who are not just looking for their next job, but they are actually without a job today, so are in a job loss situation. Now, the situation for them becomes even more acute, especially from the mindset perspective, because right now they have suffered a huge setback of being laid off from a job. And once again, you got laid off, not your mistake. Most of the layoffs that I have come across over a period of time, they are pretty much not really based on your capability, your performance ratings, etc. The organization creates a mandate that we have to do cost cutting. They come up with a number, a percentage, and then every manager has to come up with a list of names matching that number. If it's 25%, they need to just take off 1/4 of their team. Most organizations are now designed to work as small teams, and in small teams, you don't really have too much slack. You actually retain the best of your performers, and the ones who are not so great either leave by themselves or you ask them to leave. So if you were let go in a layoff, it was not because of your performance. It just happened to be bad time, right? So don't blame yourself for it. It's very important to surround yourself with the right people. Stay away from toxic people. If you are in a job search mode or laid off and job search mode, when you meet people, they will have a certain effect on you. If after having a conversation with them, you feel good, they are the right people. If after having a conversation, you feel bad about yourself, stay away from them. Or if you can't avoid, reduce your exposure to them. Some of the people you can't really avoid, so you need to just reduce your exposure, can't do much about it. Now, they might be saying the right things. They might be sounding positive. Don't focus on what they are saying. All I want you to focus on is how you felt after they left, after the end of the conversation. If you felt good, great, good people, be around them. Right people, be around them. Have more conversations with them. If you feel bad, try to reduce the exposure. It's like radiation, right? So avoid them. Avoid the toxic people, pretty logical. Now, an important question. If you've got a lot of time at hand, do ask yourself the question. If you're in a current job, ask this about the current job. If you lost a job, ask about the last job. What did you like most about the job? And this is a very important question. What were the different parts of the job that you most liked? Whether it was the technical or the actual work you did, or the interactions or managing people, working with teams, making a difference. List down the things that you liked, that you loved about your job. At the same time, also list down things that you absolutely hated about your job. Right? Loved and also hated. Now, why am I asking you to do that? Simply so that you know what do you want to do next. When you go in for the next job, in your head, you should be very, very clear what you want to do. What are the kind of jobs you want to do? What are the kind of jobs you don't want to do? That clarity in your head will allow you to assess the job better. Remember matchmaking? It's not just the interviewer assessing your fitment for the job and the organization. You are also assessing your fitment. In fact, let's reverse it. You are assessing the job's fitment for you, for your mental and physical well-being. Would you want to do the job? Do you want to do the job? You are assessing that too. And you should be doing that. Unless you are absolutely desperate to get a job, any job at whatever cost, I just need a salary, I'm absolutely at my dead end, go ahead, do whatever you want, get the job. I never recommend, I absolutely recommend that you never lie in your interviews, because that's a sure way of approaching a disaster. You can lie and get a job and it will only lead to disasters after all. But if you're desperate, hey, who am I to teach you moral codes? Go ahead, do anything and everything. But if you're not in a dire, desperate state and you are in a position where you would like to take the job that you want to do, those two questions are very, very helpful. What you loved about the job and what you hated about the last job. Okay. Now, this also brings us to a very critical question. Job change versus career change versus a little career shift. Job change is simply moving from one organization to another, pretty much doing the same work. I shouldn't even call it the job change. I should probably refer to it as a company change. You moved from one organization to another, but you're still doing absolutely the same thing. Nothing has changed. Probably not even the level has changed. Right? That's one way. Other thing is a career shift. You've been working in a certain industry, a certain area of work, probably sales, and now you would like to challenge yourself. You would like to move to another area. I don't know, maybe finance. If it's a fancy that you have, I would like to go to finance, or done enough of sales, let me go into marketing. Or I've got a lot of experience working with people, I would rather try my hand at HR. Or why not? Let me go and delve into operations. If you have found that in your past job or in the current job, there are certain aspects of the job that you love, which could help you shift your entire career, change your entire career, go ahead, do it. The third would be a small change. You have been playing a particular role in the team and you have had enough experience of it, and you would want to experience another role in the same team. You have been in finance, you have worked on one area of it, you would like to, because within finance, there would be like at least 7, 8 or 10 different areas. You would like to do that, a little shift, that's also possible. Now, these are conversations you need to have with yourself. And these are also conversations you can have with all those good people you have around you. Friends, family, mentors, your manager or managers, anybody with experience enough to guide you, you should be capitalizing on that experience. This will help you decide where you can go, where you want to. Okay. If you are in a job loss situation, you've got plenty of time, great time to think on all these things, because as you think about a career shift or a career change, you are broadening the scope of where you can apply and where you can go and look for a job. If it's only a company change in the same role, you are now restricted to if there are openings in that particular area. Okay. Great. Job loss scenario. One of the biggest problems is too much time at hand. In a typical work day, pretty much 12 hours are dedicated to work plus commute plus extra meetings or extra work. Half your day is gone there. 50% of your time. In fact, more than 50% of your awake time is gone there. With a sudden job loss, all that time is now available to you. Majority of people are not able to digest that. They don't know what to do with their time. And that's a big problem for them, because we all know an idle mind is the devil's workshop. Why we call it the devil's workshop? Because more often than not, we delve into negative thoughts rather than positive thoughts. So we will tend to go towards all things negative, or binge watch Netflix, etc., so that we don't think negative. We're just whiling away our time, we are wasting our time. Okay. But there are better things to do with the time, right? And also, this is a classic quote I remember from my school days. That's like almost 30 years ago. At the end of the day, you don't get tired by the amount of work you do. You actually get tired by the work you did not do. So if in a particular day you had a lot of idle time, you will feel mentally tired. At the end of the day, if you have done and achieved a lot in that day, you will only be physically tired, but mentally you are very charged and refreshed. In a job loss situation, you have to avoid the mentally tired state, because if you're mentally tired, you're not in the right state of mind to prepare for your next interview or even aim for the next interview. Okay. Well, what you're going to do with all the time that you have in your hand. And these are a couple of questions to trigger those thought processes. But before I go there, I realize that I've been talking at length for a lot of time. So a quick pause here, and I would like to see if anybody has got any questions. So you can actually raise your virtual hand, and one by one I can ask you to unmute and ask your questions. So whatever I've covered till now, and we're still on the mindset piece. If there are any questions, good time to ask. Vikas and Arun. Vikas, you will go first.
Hello, Mr. Hemant.
Yes.
I have a question that you have talked about this career shift. But isn't your career shift subjected to your qualification and your experience? Because if you shift a career, you will really begin at the bottom of the ladder again.
Yes
And
and no. Yes and no. So yes, qualifications, etc., play a significant role in our career shift decisions, because even if you are capable, the organization who is recruiting has certain defined standards on who we will recruit for a particular role. So that is there. But I do not agree with the fact that you will begin at the bottom of the ladder. You will have to do your own analysis about what kind of experience do you have. See, there is a reason you are doing that career shift into a particular role. You like something about that role. You have done some things in the past which you have loved, and they are pointing towards this role. So there is a match already in your head. All you need to do is present that match to the organization, tell them about the experience that you already have and what you bring to the table. And that should enable you to join in, not at the bottom, but at a slightly higher. You may not join at the same ranks. Let's say, for example, you were a director in supply chain. You have like worked for 15 years. Now you're a director in the supply chain, and you decide, done with supply chain, now I'll go into sales. You may not get a position in sales, although I'm not completely discounting it. You may actually get it, but you might get something less than that. But not at the bottom. You're not going to join as a salesperson at the bottom of the rung, because you have experience that will help in the current role also, the role you're aiming at. Okay, so it's a yes and no, but it's about the story you tell, about all the thinking you have done before the interview, all the preparation that you have done, and how can you present your case. Okay, it's all about that storytelling and presenting your case. Yes, Arun, your question. And let people see your face also, if you can.
Not in a great shape. I've been sick for a week. It's viral here. Come to India. I will infect you. You'll have some devil's time.
Okay, question.
So the question is, how would you fit the career progression? I mean, you talk about the shift. You talk about, you know, all three different components, right? The job change, the shift, and so where do you fit the promotional move into the career?
Okay. See, if you're looking for a promotion, then it's a matter of, again, I mean, my answer would be pretty much same as what I gave to Vikas. How you tell your story and how well you understand the role you're aiming for. If you're moving from one organization to another as an upward movement, you need to prove you are worthy of that position, as simple as that. And what does that mean? You should know that job role. You should understand what will it take for you to perform in that job role, and prove it in the session that you can actually do it. Now, when you're moving from one role to a higher role, the interviewer should not be expecting you to be master of the other role that you're aiming at, because it's a higher role. You haven't played that role. So you are not a master. You do not have the experience. But based on your past experience and your capability, can you give the interviewer confidence enough that I know what that role requires? I already have some of those qualities in some measure, and I'm a fast learner, and I can quickly develop those qualities as I go through that role. But I am definitely ready to play that role. If that you can convince, and if the interviewer can keep checking the boxes in his head on a piece of paper he has got or other things, where he's trying to find a fitment between the candidate and the role, you'll get it. But you will have to prepare and you will have to give it to the interviewer. Remember, the interviewer is sitting there to do a matchmaking. Make it easy for him. Don't make it difficult for the interviewer to match you to the job role. Don't make it entirely his or her responsibility to extract information from you, which will help do the matchmaking. Do that groundwork. Give all that information freely in the right context without seeming like bragging. That's where the storytelling comes in. Okay. But you need to prove yourself worthy of the next job. Okay. Any other hands? I don't see any other hands. So no other questions. Great. We'll move on. Now we come to the point where what do you do with the time? Now, while all these questions were written for the members who've lost their jobs and have got too much time at hand, anybody who's looking for their next job should also be thinking about these things. These are important questions. So let's start the questions. What were all those things that I was not able to give enough time to? These are things that you want to do, but you haven't really been able to give a lot of time to it. Okay, now that's important. These are important things in your life. To have a balanced view of life and be happy in life, you should be giving time to various parts of your life and not just work. If you've lost your job and if you have too much time, start giving more time to these things. This is your opportunity. If you have a job, try to increase this time that you're giving, because you know that you're not giving enough time. Okay, important one. This is for your mental well-being. Nothing to do with the job. It's for your mental being. What were the things that I did not do at all, but I wanted to do? Was it a vacation? Was it let's say a 10-day Vipassana course, going into a place and not speaking for 10 days? Or something that you wanted to do, but you were not able to do because you were far too busy with the job? If you have got 100% free time, go ahead and start doing this stuff. You may not get this chance again once you get the job. If you are in a job, try to figure out if you can start doing these things, because these are important to you. That's why you have listed them, and start figuring out how you can do a little, how you can give a little time to this. Okay. Again, mental well-being. These are very, very important. Hobbies. What are the hobbies that you wanted to pursue, but you could not? The next one is activities. Now I'm putting them under certain things, but if you were to think deeply, they're all pretty much connected. Again, these are things that you wanted to be involved with. Activities. It could be social work. It could be something to do with the place where you stay, your society, right? Your friend circle. They are doing something and you wanted to be involved with that and you couldn't because you did not have time. Find time for those things. Learning needs to be continuous. Every year, every month, every week, we should be learning something new. We should be actually allocating a part of our salary, a percentage of a salary, to learning. More than a year ago, I actually made a LinkedIn post where I put a percentage. And just sensing that a lot of people may not agree with the high number that I was going to put in, I actually put it at 3%. 3% of your annual salary should be something that you invest in yourself for learning something new. Not just work related. It could be anything. You could be learning a music instrument, or kayaking, or scuba diving. I don't know. Or you could be doing a certification or something else, but learning something new. I would recommend, if you can, increase that percentage. Don't limit it to 3%. Try to take it to 5. Try to take it to 10. The more you invest in yourself across the board, not just work related, but life related, financial independence, knowledge related, various aspects of life. Learn meditation if you want to, if you're not already doing it. Experiment with new learnings. Invest in yourself. It will reap benefits multifold. It goes a long way in improving the quality of your life. So do that. Right? Financial situation. you should have a good handle on your financial situation, whether you are holding a job or you have lost a job. If you have lost a job, you should be knowing very clearly how much runway have you got. How many months can you survive without a job, with zero income? What are your emergency sources? Is there a person you can ask a loan for? Let's say you have a 6-month runway and you don't get a job for 6 months. Where do you go next? Right? When people lost their jobs in the middle of COVID, there was very little hope for finding another job also. There were times when you saw posts by people that I've been without a job for 12 months, 15 months, even 18 months. Now that's a very long period to survive without a job. So what is your financial situation? What is your emergency fund runway? And whom can you approach to ask for money beyond that? Where can you arrange money from? If you have some assets, what could you liquidate, what you could not, and so on and so forth. Have a good handle on your financial situation. Right. And one of the most important things, what are the things that you need to do for your job search? Is it LinkedIn polishing? Is it your CVs that needs to be relooked at? Multiple CVs to be created for multiple job roles that you are vying for? Customized CVs for particular job and company that you are approaching, and so on and so forth. Networking with people, talking to friends, talking to ex-bosses, talking to ex-colleagues, and so on and so forth. There's a whole lot of things that you need to do specifically for your job search. List them down. And now that you have a list of all these things which you have listed across last 4 or 5 slides, now you have a to-do list. Now you need to prioritize it. Prioritization is very easy. Against each of those items, give a rating of 1, 2, and 3. 1 is the lowest, 3 is the highest priority. How important is that activity to you? That's the first question. That's a feeling. How impactful that action is going to be for you and your life. That's analysis. If you let's say invest in a learning course or a certification, is that going to increase your chances of getting a job? So impact is going to be significant, and its importance also becomes higher. But if the impact is lower, and okay, it's something which I wanted to do, so it's important for me, 3, but impact may or may not happen, so 1. And just keep multiplying those numbers. Something is very important, very impactful, 3 into 3, 9 you will get. Low importance and low impact, 1 into 1, 1 you will get. And once you have all the scores, it's a simple sort. You now have all the to-dos that you need to do in the order of tackling, and start tackling them. Schedule them, utilize all your time, and plan your days. Do not remain idle. Okay, well, and with that we come to the last aspect of your mindset. Now I've actually spent most of my time today, most of the 90-minute session, just on mindset, because that is the most important piece. That is the most important part of the preparation for your job interviews. Now we come to the last part, which is your personality. Do you know yourself and your personality? It would be a good idea to do a personality assessment of sorts. There are plenty of personality assessments that are available online, right from the Myers-Briggs to various other types. And you might have done some personality tests or assessment as part of your career already. Look at them. Try to understand yourself from that personality perspective and see, does your personality match the job you are doing? Remember what you love versus what you hate about your job. Now, when you put it in context of your personality, you will see why you hated certain parts and why you loved certain parts. This understanding of yourself will help you take a better decision on whether you are just going for a company change, job change, career shift, or a career change. These will help you decide that. And remember, when you are in the interview, in the room with the interviewer, that person is trying to match you with the job, which is a matter of skills matching, technical skills as well as managerial or managing skills. But even more than that, they are trying to match you to the organization culture. And that's where your personality comes into play. They are trying to assess your personality, not using a tool. They might have asked you to do a psychometric test or something, but in the interview, the person is seeing what kind of a person you are, what is your personality, will you fit in to the organization culture, will you fit in with the existing team and the team members, will you fit in working very smoothly with the manager you are going to report. That's the kind of assessment they are doing. So it's very important for you also to understand your own personality. Okay, with that, we pretty much come to the end of the mindset part of it. Of course, it will keep coming again and again because it's absolutely all pervasive. But with that, we come to the part about great storytelling, right? So of course, every interview is a storytelling session and you need to be ready with the storytelling material. Do not think that you know your life. Do not assume that. A lot of times people walk into an interview with the intent that if a question is asked, I will answer it because I know myself, I know my life, I know my career. If they ask for an example, okay, where have you shown leadership skills? Oh, I've got plenty of examples. And then what happens? You are asked and you can't think of anything very quickly. And then you respond with the first example that hits you. And the first example that hits you in your head may not be the best one because you had pretty much a fraction of a second to think about it. So why go into an interview unprepared? In your school days, you never went for a school exam unprepared. As we are right, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. Absolutely correct here. In your school exams, you never walked into an examination hall without preparation, without looking at the syllabus, without knowing which subject, without knowing what kind of questions are coming. Yet, candidates walk into a job interview without knowing themselves, without preparing themselves, without knowing the company they are interviewing for, what products they do, what services they do, what is their global reach, what are the high-level numbers in terms of revenues, etc. In which parts of the country they are existing and where the distribution is. Or they have not even researched the role they are interviewing. They haven't really gone through the JD. They just saw the few lines of the JD. Okay, I've done this before, apply. They have not even looked at the JD. That is unpardonable. If you are not getting that job, that is not even a matchmaking issue. That's sheer carelessness on your part. You did not do your bit to get the job. You couldn't create a match because you did not even know what you were matching with. You couldn't tell a story which would match. You were just telling your own story, and that doesn't help. Okay, so you need to collect all the material for storytelling, which is essentially you are asking yourself, of course, first, are you a storyteller? Can you tell a story? And when I say can you tell a story, I mean, can you tell an interesting story? A lot of us, when it comes to talking about ourselves, can get very boring for the other person. We are very interested. The other person will get bored when we start talking about ourselves. And we need to be very cognizant of that fact that we are not a boring storyteller. Do you love to talk about yourself or you don't talk about yourself? Your achievements as well as your failures and your experiences, right? Do you like talking about it? Do you love talking about it? What are the best stories? And this is what I said. If you're asked the question in the interview, you don't have time to pick the best one, which is why you need to create your own story bank. What are those experiences? What are the achievements and failures from your past life, from your past work life, from your personal life that can be used in the interview? All that thinking has to happen much below the interview, much before the interview. You need to be prepared with which story you are going to use in what kind of situation. Everything has to be ready. So even your best stories have to be ready. And what are the lessons learned from your life events, personal as well as at work? You should have at least one learning from each one, right? So that you can use it when the time is right in the interview. Okay. What are the interesting aspects of your life beyond work? What is the most common question across all interviews? Tell me about yourself. Pretty much the first question, pretty much the most common question. Mark the words. Tell me about yourself. The question is not tell me about your career. The question is not tell me about the work you have done in the past. It's not tell me about what you have written in the CV. It's tell me about yourself. It's beyond work also. So there is a bit of personal life. There is a bit of personal hobbies. What do you do beyond work? What is something interesting in your life that you would like to share with the interviewer? I have had conversations with people who have been through it, like as part of the whole coaching, and there have been at least 3 instances where 75 to 80% of the interview time was spent talking about non-work related things. In one instance, there was, out of an hour interview, 45 minutes or almost 40 minutes were spent talking about diving, which has got nothing to do with the job. And both of them were talking about diving. The guy who I was working with, he had done a lot of diving, and the person who was interviewing had also done a lot of diving. And they were just sharing notes and comparing notes about the different dive sites they had been. And it's very common to come up. If you give the interviewer a chance, if you give them an insight into your life, those conversations can happen. And please, I would encourage you to allow those conversations to happen, because they present you as a human being and not a robot who is fit for a job. Okay, they want humans. So that you should be ready with what is interesting aspects of your life. Of course, what are the key achievements of your life, of work and personal life? You can have a lot of achievements about work, which you, of course, talk about in your job. But have you run a marathon or a half marathon? Are you a swimming champion, a kabaddi champion? Have you done some social work wherein you've actually made a big difference, or you were part of a fund collection drive? You spearheaded that, and while you may not have contributed that much cash, but you collected that much cash or other things and made a difference to people's life. What are the other key achievements of your life? Talk about them. Context is everything here. See, all this is your story. And once again, the interviewer is not interested in only your story. They're not there sitting to hear your story. What they are sitting there to do is matchmaking. So when you are telling your story, it has to be in the context of the organization and the job you're aiming for. The stories that you tell have to be in the context of the organization and the job you're aiming for. Look at what are the qualities and skill sets that are required in the job. Look for those qualities and the skill sets in your stories. And those are the stories that you talk about in a particular interview, which means every interview, your stories will change. You will pick a different set of stories to match the organization, the job role, and the requirements of that. So that's context, right? What is it? I don't know. The context is very important here. Okay, your stories cannot be independent of the organization and the role. Right? The context of the storytelling is, of course, there. And yes, the classic question you might have heard early in the career, tell me about your weaknesses. And the general thing was, oh, pick up a weakness which you can highlight as a strength. And oh no, I'm a perfectionist as a weakness which can be shown as a strength. Please don't do that. Everybody can see through that. Everybody has challenges in their life, in their career. And these challenges, for the objective of our conversation today, can be classified as into 3 categories. Challenges which you have overcome. You face them and you overcome those challenges. Congratulations. Challenges which you are still overcoming. Right? A simple example could be smoking. Smoking, you were smoking, you decided one day that you will leave it, and then in a structured manner or in one shot, you left it. Great, congratulations, number one. Number two, still working on it. You left it, restarted it, left it again. You have tried 2-3 different techniques, but you are still work in progress. You have definitely reduced it, right? Third case would be it's still a challenge. You left it, started again, and you are still back at the same level. Left it again, started again, same at the same level. So you are trying, but you haven't really cracked the code. Now, these are 3 different categories, and each one has its value because these are challenges. You have overcome challenges. That's a great thing to talk about. You are overcoming certain challenges. That's also a great thing to talk about because it's work in progress. You're persistent. You have not given up. It's a great thing to talk about. And of course, you're human. You're not perfect. There are still some goals that you're missing, still some challenges which are challenging you. So even those are great stories to talk about. Of course, if the job requires a certain skill and that skill is still a big challenge, be careful about mentioning that. I would prefer that you mention that so that if you're not fit for the role, you don't end up in the role and save yourself from a lot of frustration. But that's an area you need to take a call yourself. Okay, great. Now, I love this quote, especially because I wrote it. Challenges cease to become challenges if you find a way to overcome them. And that's what makes the category 1 and 2 very, very powerful. It's the fact that you overcame challenges, right? And that's a very great skill or a quality present to the interview. Okay, the most important question of the interview, we have talked about it. Tell me about yourself. This is a question you have to prepare. A lot of people feel that, oh, why do I have to prepare talking about myself? I know myself. I know my career. I know my CV by heart. No, you still need to prepare for it. Nobody wants to hear your life story for 30 minutes, not even 15 minutes. 10 minutes is when I would actually start switching off. 7-8 minutes, great if you actually have a 15-20 year career span. If your career is less than 10 years, wrap it up in 5 minutes. You will need to take a call on what will be the duration of your tell me about yourself, depending on how long your career has been and what kind of wonderful things you have done during that career. You cannot bore your interviewer right in the first phase of the interview. Tell me about yourself has to be the most interesting question of has to be the most interesting answer in the entire interview. That's going to set the tone and the pace of the entire interview. This generally comes at the beginning, right? This is also the point where you seed everything. You are feeding the interviewer information about yourself. Based on what you feed, the next possible questions are. As you talk about yourself, the interviewer is making notes. Oh, you mentioned this. Oh, you mentioned this. Oh, you mentioned this. And then the interviewer will actually ask you to further elaborate on those things. Whatever you tell them, they will use it for you, against you, whichever way you want to look at. But this is the point where you feed them what you want to talk about. If there is something you don't want to talk about, don't mention it. If there is something that you want to talk about, you can go passionately about it for hours, mention it. Don't go for hours. When you give it a chance, speak up and shut up. A large part of preparation is to get those stories right. And what do you mean by stories right? The stories have to be interesting and they got to finish within 2 or 1 minute, depending on the intensity of the story and the achievements and the complexity involved. 1 to 2 minutes. Very, very complex situation, very, very complex solution and the achievement, 3-4 minutes, not more than that. You can't go on for 5-10 minutes on a single story. Absolutely not. You have lost the plot. The person has lost the plot because you are not able to come at the point of the story and they are completely missing the point then. Okay. Most critical question, this has to be a prepared answer. It doesn't have to seem prepared. It should seem natural that you are talking about yourself, but you can't leave it to chance as to whatever I can think of, I will talk about it. Okay, great. Prepare for this question as if your life depends on it, because actually your life does depend on that question. Okay, I've already covered this. Research the company, research the job role, and marry yourself to the company and the job role when you are telling the story. This is where you are essentially doing the interviewer's job of matchmaking. Make it easy for that guy. That person is responsible for doing the matchmaking. Do the marriage yourself and present all the stories in the right manner. It is your job to convince the interviewer that this is a match made in heaven. But you got to believe this first. You got to actually find this first. If you find that the job is not a good fit for you as an individual, my personal advice, at some point, mention it that, oh, this is a part where I will not be comfortable, or I don't want to do this. Probably I'm not a good fit. Or just slow down in the interview. Let the interview lead to a rejection. Don't make an attempt to get the job you don't want. Okay, just leads to frustration in the end. Right? This is what I've been talking about. Connect the dots, connect the storytelling and the matchmaking. Make it easy for the interviewer. With that, we come to the last part, which is the actual interview. Right? Taking charge of the interview, and we come it literally to the end of the session, because now it's easy. You are now prepared. Okay, you have done all the groundwork and you are far more prepared for the interview. You are in a far better position. You are all set with everything ready in your head as to how do I take it. And being in the interview, it's a very simple game for you. Right? Of course, the interview is often treated as a game of chess, where you are trying to predict, while playing your moves, you are trying to predict the moves of your opponent. In this case, the interviewer. But always remember that the prediction of what the opponent's move is going to be hugely depends on your own move. Right? It's interdependent. In our case, for a job interview, tell me about yourself. If you get that question right up front, which happens in pretty much most of the cases, great, the interview has been handed over to you. The entire interview has been handed over to you. It's like telling the interviewer telling you, please come and sit in the driving seat of the car, drive around, I'll be the backseat passenger. Don't give the controls back to the interviewer. Do not do that. If you're doing that, then you have already failed at the interview. Okay, we've talked about this. Your tell me about yourself response is the seed for the entire interview. You are sowing seeds for future questions, questions that you want the interviewer to ask you, questions you have already prepared for, questions you can answer passionately, questions that will lead you to talk about achievements that you have done, a difference you have made to the organization, to the society, and other things. All that seeding has to happen in talk about yourself. It has to be a well articulated response, finishing off in under 10 minutes if you've got a long stretch of career, or a shorter stretch under 5 minutes. Keep it short, give the key points, and then shut up. Right? That's the start of the interview. That's not the core interview. That's just you feeding the machine. Okay. Now that the interview begins, you have fed the initial things, and now there will be questions. And in response to each question, now you go completely into the storytelling mode, where you are now constantly connecting the dots. Your story connected to the job role. What are the requirements of the job and the context of the organization? All the relevant stories from your past you need to bring in. There may be work-related stories, or they may be non-work related stories. Let me give you an example. In my case, Post engineering, 1.5 years at IT organization doing software engineering. I was creating a website, intranet website. And then the IT bubble burst and I lose my job. Best day of my career. And I don't want to do another IT job. So I start off on my own along with a friend and we go into the training business. We do personality development programs. We do GDPI training for MBA aspirants. I do Vedic mathematics programs, all sorts of things. I do that for a year and a half while also preparing for my MBA entrance exams. I give my MBA and then I end up becoming a consultant. During my MBA, along with another friend, we co-founded an event, India's first fully online business games event back in 2004, when all the business events or the business school events used to be offline. People would go to the campus, participate and do it. There were no online events. The only events which would happen online were, here's a case study, send your responses by email. And sometimes it would even come with a request that send 2 copies by email. We never understood why that was a trend, but it happened. We had to actually say copy 1 and copy 2 and send 2 copies attached to the email. And we attempted that. We were a 30-member team and we did that. And then, of course, my career. When it comes to my interviews, there are obviously examples from my work life that I pick up and I talk about. But I make it a point that I mention that online event which I was part of, which I helped create along with another person, and that 1.5 years of entrepreneurial stint that I did. It was still work, but it was very different flavor. During that event, me and another friend created Arbit Chaudhary, which was the world's first MBA comic character. Got nothing to do my entire work life and everything. It's just something that I did. I also read a lot of books, non-fiction books, nothing to do with work. Right? As a consultant, I should be reading work-related books also, but I've read like 50, 60 books in a year. I've written short stories, again, completely not work-related. These are all interesting bits about me. I should know when to bring them in the storytelling that I'm doing and create a relevance to the job, to the organization. Yes, I can make just my story interesting, but that has to happen in the context of the interview. One more thing about the interview. The interview is a conversation. It's not a Q&A. Why I'm separating the two? Simple. An interview is not a conversation where one person is asking question and the other is answering. Because that is what we normally think of it. Interviewer, questions, the interviewee or you as a job aspirant are answering those questions. And as a formality, at the end, the interviewer will ask, oh, do you have any questions? And most of the times we will have none. But then it is told that, oh, you have to seem intelligent and you have to force a question out of it. So ask some typical questions. Don't do that. When you walk into an interview, if you have researched the company, if you have researched the job, you obviously have some questions. While you have had the conversation, based on the questions asked, there will be certain questions that you have got. Genuinely ask those questions. And you need not wait till the end of the interview to ask them. Remember, it's a live conversation. Okay, you can ask the question as they arise. That you can always say, though, I have a question here. You asked me this and I was thinking about this particular aspect of the job. Is this required? Is a particular skill set required? Do I need a certification or do I need a certain qualification? Right? Those questions can come in. Okay, I'm suddenly seeing a couple of questions in the chat. Feeling to okay, how do we start to answer that question, technical or personal? And if we are applying different jobs, should we make different resumes? Okay, resumes, yes. Invest some time in your resumes. You should be writing or creating different resumes for different job roles. If it's a similar job, then the same resume can count. But if it's distinctly different, Your resume should highlight relevant experience. Remember, everybody is looking for relevant experience. So that should be highlighted. And how do we start to answer the question, technical or personal? Is it the question about tell me about yourself? Because you can nod and tell, okay. It's about you. It's about yourself. It's not technical or personal. It's your overall personality. So it has to be a personal touch all throughout and the technical bits thrown in. Let me explain. You start off, of course, come from this part of India, schooling in this city, and very quickly, these are not things you dwell on. This has been my initial first 2 jobs, second job, third job, fourth job. Now, in those jobs, you are telling what you did in that job. You're also telling what you learned in those jobs as an individual, as a person. What was the skill set you acquired in that job? Now, that's the personal story along with your work story. So don't separate them, the two. Let them go hand in hand. Remember, they're looking for people, not robots. Okay. So during the interview, you can ask questions and do ask. Treat it like a conversation and not you being put, you're not being interrogated. Keep it conversational. Right? Your style should be that of listening to a question, thinking for a second about it, and then responding to it. Don't get flustered if suddenly you don't get an answer quickly. If there is a question and you don't have an immediate answer, give me a moment to think about it. You can actually say that in an interview. Take a moment. If the answer comes to you, great, answer it now. It is not taken against you if you're not able to give a fastest finger first kind of an answer. You have time to answer. If you don't come up with an answer, admit it. I don't know. I don't have the answer. I can't think of a solution. I have not encountered a similar situation before. And at this point, in the given time, I can't really think of a way out. If you can think of even a starting point and not the solution. Sometimes it's like, oh, we have a problem. We have this situation. How do you resolve that? You don't know the solution. Do you have the starting point? Do you have the first 2-3 possible steps you will take? Okay, let me talk to the people involved. Let me look at all the facts related to the situation. I will also ask around a few people if they have, like my network, my ex-bosses, right? Those are valid things you would do if you faced a situation. Start on that. If you don't have the end solution, just don't say, I don't know. If you have even the starting point, say the starting point and I will find a solution. Not everybody has a solution. If they had the solution, that problem wouldn't be there or they would have already solved it. If they can get even a sense that, oh, this guy can actually figure out a solution, you've got it. Right? So keep it conversational. So be prepared with your stories. Always provide the stories in the context of the organization and the job role. Do the matchmaking for the interviewer. Present yourself that. You are also evaluating the job, your fitment to the job, the job's fitment to your life. So you can also reject a job. It's not just the interviewer who is rejecting your candidature, and it's not a rejection. It's just the match did not work out. Kundali did not match. Very simply. Okay. So that's pretty much all about the interview. And then, of course, you need to have practice of the interview. You need to have a friend, a mentor, a coach, or a senior person you have worked with in the past. Contact them and tell them, I am looking for a job. I have interviews coming up, but I want to practice an interview. Can you do one mock interview with me? We'll do it over Zoom. I'll just record it so that I can watch it and learn from it. And you can provide me with your feedback at the end of the interview. Ask around. There will be people who are ready to help you. In most cases, they will say yes. In very few cases, they will say no. People are there to help you. Just go ahead and ask for help. Those interviews will give you a wealth of information and enlightenment about yourself. When I do job interview coaching, it's almost 10 sessions. Each session goes on for 2 hours. So preparing somebody for their interviews is a minimum 20 hours engagement that I have. And then if it's a model where I will help that person until that person gets a job, in that case, I will continue to have more sessions and prepare him for every job interview that person is going through. Half of those sessions minimum are going to be mock interviews. Initial first 2 sessions of preparation, figuring out the stories, asking him to write the stories, etc. And then it's a mock interview. Because once you have prepared all those stories, in the interview, in the heat of the moment, when the pressure is on, you should be able to pull the right stories and tell your story. That's the final nail in the coffin. That's what is required at the end of the day. That's where you win the interview. All that preparation is ready to give it, but that interview preparation, and this is what happens with most people, they don't practice their interviews. They don't know how to practice an interview, and that's where they start failing. So that's an important aspect of it. Great. Well, with that, I pretty much come to the end of our session today. I would now open the floor to all of you. Any questions that you have, we will be covering them. But formally, this session kind of comes to an end here. I will also stop the recording here. And thank you for coming. Don't have to leave it. Just let me stop the recording.